everybody. Hello, Paris. Wonderful to be here. First, what we thought we'd like to do is have the panelists introduce themselves. I'm the least important and least intelligent person on this panel. Howard Wright at NVIDIA. We get to work with startups all over the world. Juliette, how about you first?
Hello, yes, it's working. So super happy to be there and super nice to meet you. I'm Juliette Ast. I'm working for Serena Capital, which is a European VC fund based in Paris, 1 billion AUM. And the specificity of that is that I'm working for the data ventures team, especially investing in open source frameworks and data software infrastructure topics.
Hi, hello everybody. So I'm Cédric Auliac. I'm working for GENCI. So we are buying and providing the computing infrastructure for open research in France. And I am also coordinating the AI Factory France, which recently announced a collaboration with NVIDIA with respect to startups, and which is a one-stop shop to provide services to our computing resources users.
And I'm Yann, Lechelle, co-founder and CEO at probabl. I'm sorry we swapped seats compared to the pictures, so I hope you reconcile the two. So yeah, probabl is a company, startup, spin-off from the NVIDIA Research Center, and we are responsible for scikit-learn. Scikit-learn is a Python machine learning framework that has been #1 in the world for about 10 years, 3.5 billion downloads. It is the framework used by every data scientist on the planet. And so as a startup now, we are the guardian of this technology, which is fundamental. And we are building a value proposition, commercial value proposition on top of it to sustain the company and of course to build up the machine learning capacities for enterprise plays.
And maybe something that I didn't mention, that Serena is one of the proud investors of probabl, so this is why we're here today.
There's a bit of interplay between NVIDIA and the VC world, so we'll explain that as well.
This is all part of the coalition of the willing for sure. It seems like the last couple of years, there has been this French renaissance as associated with AI, research, investing. It feels like some countries are going to be consumers of AI, and some countries are going to be creators of AI. Could you take a few minutes and walk us through some of your thesis from your firms on how you continue to be on the cutting edge of the creation of AI? Juliette?
So perhaps to rebound on what I just said, it turns out that France has been very applied when it comes to algorithmic and applied math, right? So you all know the Plateau de Saclay, where a lot of engineering schools are anchored, and the technology that we develop essentially comes from there. Typically, the people who are pretty comfortable with complex math, which emerged about 10 years ago with the advent of big data and machine learning, right, in a traditional sense. So let aside deep learning and Gen AI, when it comes to machine learning, we have the engineering schools that produce the minds that are comfortable with math. So I wouldn't say that we produce AI, but we produce very well one very specific layer of AI, one that is fundamental.
Cédric, you witness first front row seat to all of this is happening. As we as North Americans, as we're looking in, it just feels like France is going to build bigger than its size, bigger than her size. Is that what you think from inside the organization as well?
Bigger than its size, I'm not sure, but I wish. I hope we will do this. Yeah, just to rebound on just what you said, clearly one of the big investments of the French government was in computing infrastructure, because we really had this belief that computer and computing power shouldn't be in the way of great minds, of startups founders, of researchers. So really the idea behind everything what we do at GENCI and with our associates is really to make sure that any lab, any startup, any great company has the mean to push, to move forward and to push its innovation on the market and to do great discoveries, really about open research.
Excellent. Juliette, your theses on investing, you've been very active. You see the best of the best that come through not just France, but come through the entire region. Take us a little bit more through Serena and your investments that have already been announced.
Of course, so the particularity of Serena Data Ventures is that we're looking for pre-seed and seed investments, so pretty early stage. That's why we're working a lot with INRIA, CNRS, or other research institutes. Of course, we like to be really close to them, and we're also like looking at engineers from Mistral, Hugging Face, or Datadog, also building their own companies. So we like to be the first partner to be able to support their growth. And I think that's what is super interesting about our investment thesis, that we are huge believers in open source. We don't think that it's a structural disadvantage, quite the opposite actually, because we think that so there's lots of research, lots of iteration around open source that can help build real European champions, and this is how we like to be part of their adventure.
Yeah, so let's double down on open source. We're big proponents of it, as you've heard us announce, and Jensen in our last keynote earnings call doubled and tripled down on our commitment to open source. Yann, not just probabl, but all the other things that you've done in your storied career. Can we talk about open source, the four of us, for a few minutes?
So open source is, I'm not from the open source community at first, but I came to it because I realized that open source is a way to distribute the benefits of technology to as many as possible. In some cases, there is hardware dependencies, but for the software layer, you need a lot of people to be able to unpack what it means. And so scikit-learn is a prime example of what works, and probabl is building on it, and we're lucky to have Serena, because Serena is a rare case of VCs in France and Europe that have actually developed a thesis around it. Because people think open source is a problem because it's free, so therefore nobody can make money. That's wrong, it's a myth. People think that it's a cybersecurity risk. That's wrong. The biggest leaks, right, have actually been patched by the community the fastest. So there's a lot of myths to debunk, and open source actually is a force for good because it creates horizontal distribution of certain aspects of technology and allows companies to then pick it up and create a vertical use case. So it is a bit counterintuitive, but we found the right partners in terms of venture capital, and NVIDIA is a force to reckon with because it actually propels from the bottom up. And so we do need the software at some point where we can enable an entire realm of, startups, right? Building vertical use cases, and our software is an enabler at the bottom, in a way.
Cédric, back to GENCI and open source. The announcement went out this morning. Hopefully you saw his LinkedIn or my LinkedIn. Could not be more proud to be a partner with you and what you're doing. I think of it as the heart, if not the brain, of AI infrastructure and research right here in France. How will you measure yourself a couple of years from now? The number of startups, the number of additional verticals that you're able to embellish, improve. What should we look for?
What I can tell you is what we have seen with our users. Because so GENCI came from HPC, so AI started with the GENCI supercomputer in 2019, so almost 6 years ago. So we have quite a strong history of serving computing for AI research, and we have seen it starting with really academic laboratories doing fundamental research about AI, and it's true that over the years, for instance, applications are picking up. We have more and more users using AI for science, physics, biology, more and more companies, a lot of startups, really a lot of startups, coming in to develop new technologies, applied technologies. So we are really seeing the flow of what you described, how it's picking up, how ideas are flowing, like you said, between all those actors. And basically we are supporting open research, and we strongly believe that it helps a lot to elevate the whole ecosystem. We can really see the academic laboratories with startups and big groups working together and exchanging knowledge, data, models. It works pretty well, actually.
Juliette, do you think that this is one of the best times? I mean, this consequential shift in technologies, it feels like a revolution, not an evolution, and each of the verticals. So maybe not you, but the rest of us are old enough to remember, okay, semiconductor for this and the internet for the other thing, and oh, it's going to be, Web3, oh, it's going to be something else. This really feels like almost energy itself. How do you think about the verticals, or how do you prioritize the verticals through the lens at your job at Sierra?
So that's true that many people are saying that with AI, we're kind of maybe reproducing the mobile bubble that we had in the early 2000s. So that's a bit different with our investment thesis, because we're like huge believers in the infrastructure software topics, which means that we really interest ourselves into the lower layers of technologies. It might be true that regarding application layers, there might be a problem, because now we see that huge models are releasing also like end-to-end products, which can compete directly to all the middlewares or all the application layers. So building something on top of all the different LLMs in the markets. And in our hands, I think that open source and infrastructure software is such a revolution, because we see that in terms of speeds, fundraising, so there are more and more amounts, trusts, which is given to those software engineers, to those entrepreneurs wanted to be something which will be like sticky and which will have a long-lasting defensible moat, which is super important for us, and that's why we like to focus on infrastructure softwares.
We are lucky enough at NVIDIA and our startups team to have over 35,000 startups that work with us on any given day, and they represent the best and the brightest. Our job is to scour the earth, to find them, and bring them on board, and then democratize access to compute and collaboration and cash, et cetera. Can we double down a little bit more on probabl in terms of one of the brightest of our stars happens to be probabl, and the, pun intended, the inception of that is pretty interesting to me. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you because we renewed our partnership, and it's coming from you to us. So it's a gift, but it's a gift you're doing to the community, because you double down also on contributing to open source frameworks. And on our part, we know full well that in order to maximize the efficiency of the algorithms, we need to optimize for your hardware in particular. Your hardware is so successful that we cannot not do it. In other words, we need to close the loop. And probabl is, of course, building new solutions on top of that particular asset. But when it comes to matrix-based calculations, we need to offload to the GPU, and that is something we are very keen to work on.
That is great. Coming back to GENCI, Cédric, just the intellectual firepower that walks into the building every day. I'm not talking about the backhouse, I'm not talking about the racks, I'm not talking about the GPUs or the networking. It must be wonderful to witness history changing on a day-to-day basis as you see students, researchers, folks of all walks of life, including VCs, building this together. Is that create the French pride in you, or is that just something that is your job and to mechanize all of these digital assets?
The French pride was already here. Let's be clear. But clearly it helps you going to the office with a big smile every morning, for sure. It's extremely rewarding to see some, we are just providing the compute, but to see our users succeeding in their business, as a big startups, extremely rewarding to see some big academic projects progressing. About fundamental physics, about cosmology, there are marvelous projects about that, about earth sciences, about material sciences, it's really a big deal, I think. One of the big jump we will see in fundamental research. So yeah, it's extremely exciting to see all this. And like you said, at the end of the day, even if it's my job, I'm not caring so much about AI and the computing infrastructure. What is extremely exciting is to see the science and the technology which raise from this. It's extremely cool.
And do you think about the verticals that it will affect, or do you think about all the verticals? You think about what's here with quantum and robotics, and here's healthcare, life science, and here's cyber. Do you get to that level of specificity, or just making sure that everybody has access to access itself?
We are trying to. Specialize and provide resources, like not only computing, but also services, technical support, specialize for every kind of vertical, because we know that basically you don't crunch data in the health sector the same way you are using them in the marketing sector, for instance. But to be honest, you're always going with the flow, because in startups, in companies, it's moving very fast. So the idea is to be really flexible, to try to adapt, to provide the good resource, the good service at the right time. But you always can try to anticipate, but honestly, most of the time, I'm wrong.
Fair enough. Juliette, not a favorite vertical, but things that you probably, your eyes gravitate towards on a quarterly, monthly basis. Any of these hyper fascinating to you and part of the thesis from Serena?
So I think that everyone has seen it, but 2025 was really the year of physical AI. So physical AI can be several things, right? You have several use cases toward robotics, for instance. And as an investor, the idea is to really understand how we want to provide value. So it can be both on the hardware side, also more on the software side regarding, I don't know, for instance, imitation learning solutions, reinforcement learning solutions. So of course, we keeping close eyes on that. I think there are also like many things happening around simulations.
Yes.
So for example, industrial simulations, both for the aeronautics industry, also for huge energy projects. So I think this is super important also to have really your eyes focused on physical AI and industrial simulations. And now we have some synergies between AI, quantum. You're really able to do some super fast calculations. So this is really a fascinating time to be an investor, I guess. Especially see so many research projects coming out of stealth. So this is really nice.
Well, I consider myself one of the luckiest guys in high tech and get to learn something from folks like you every day. I was hoping I'd be able to buy you a free cup of coffee upstairs and continue this conversation, but for this session, can we have a round of applause for these experts that have leaned in? Thank you so much.